Hello everyone. Welcome to Kyunki Profs the Kabhi Students Thhey, a podcast where we interview professors about their college life. Today, we have with us Professor Parag Bhargava from the Department of Metallurgical Engineering and Material Science. Sir, can you please give us a short introduction?
My name is Parag Bhargava. I did my BTech from here from 1987 to 1991, long back. None of you were born at that time. After that, I went for my master's and PhD to the US, and then did a postdoc and came back to India. And my first job was as a faculty member at IIT Kharagpur. And then in 2005, I moved back to IIT Bombay, and I've been here since then.
So, like reflecting back to when you were a student in IIT Bombay, can you share with us some memorable experiences or challenges that you think shaped you into who you are?
Yeah, so coming to IIT, I think which happens to many of us possibly that you, firstly, as soon as you come here, you encounter all these people who are either equally smart or much smarter than what you think you are doing. Also, usually the first year, I mean, it was overwhelming in that sense. The experience of being with that entire batch. Our times, there was one interesting thing which does not exist now, that we had no mid-semester exam, so it was continuous evaluation. So we had exams every week. It was very challenging to handle that. And then I remember a course, CS 101, I think maybe still called CS 101, which was again very challenging. And there were times as I said, it was every week we had exam, and there were times where you would consistently score 0 on your quizzes, and it was very stressful. So first year was actually very stressful. And then the hostel life, I mean, unlike now, we stayed in a single hostel right from beginning till the end, 4 years. Of course, your departmental courses now, if you still get a department introductory course, we had it from third semester, and things become little more relaxed once you are within your department, as compared to what you are doing in the batch. In terms of challenges, I think the challenges were in terms of, it took some time for me to be able to figure out my time management, and that too, as I said, weekly exams, and how do you manage everything. Hostel life, those days, no internet, so there was a lot more interaction among all of us who were in the hostel. A lot of people were finding this sudden freedom being in the hostels, and staying up late at nights, things like those. So time management was really one major challenge. Okay. I guess otherwise life was very smooth. We just never could. The 4 years just went by like without realizing how they got over.
Which hostel were you in when you were a student?
I was in hostel 9.
Okay. So have you visited the hostel now as a faculty?
Multiple times. Though it doesn't feel the same unless until you are with you with your old friends and all that.
Mm.
Yeah.
And did you have the wing culture or the roommate? I mean, right now in our times, people have bonding with their wings because of the new hostels. They are quite, like a building. So, what were the hostel stories?
Yeah. See, though hostel 9, for example, it's as compared to the new hostels that you have, it's a regular smaller hostel, maybe about 250 people. So there was a strong bonding, and I mean, we didn't have room partners though. We had single rooms right from the beginning. Now, of course, there is this challenge of number of rooms, not sufficient for the students we have. And hostel life was a lot about people playing pranks. No internet. Imagine there were no other things to engage you. So I think the socialization was far more than what you see now. That's my understanding. It could be different. And most of the time people would be in each other, somebody's room, getting together, CAC sessions. all kinds of discussions, arguments, and playing pranks, as I said. And somehow, for some reason, that time Hostel 9 was famous or infamous for all these major pranks at the institute level also. So and some people kind of rallied behind some of these people who were doing crazy stuff. Things like people in the hostel at times betting. You still have the PAF, right? Those times PAF was held in the convocation hall. So in our days, in Hostel 9, this happened, an incident where people were betting among each other. Particularly, there were certain students, and one kingpin of those students, who I think was primarily betting that the upcoming PAF, and that was involving H10 and some other hostel. He said that we would disrupt it. It would not go as planned. And this person actually, maybe with others, had planted bombs, which we later on only realized. Those Diwali Sutli bombs kind of thing. And as we went into the convocation hall, just at the right time, around 10 minutes into the show, these bombs went off, and inside the convocation hall, the sound resonated like crazy, and the PAF, was shut down. So, and that made H9 very, as I said, famous, infamous, whatever you want to call, and the person became very bold. And similar spirit was reflected in the hostel life all the time. I don't know whether you use that term now, but the Kida level was exceptionally high, I think, in those days in every hostel, which maybe I don't see it as much, or I don't hear it as much. You will know better.
Wow, okay. So, yeah, now, did you have a favorite spot in campus where you used to hang out, or?
Yeah, I mean, those days, actually, even though the leopard sightings were there, I'm saying why that is connected. The institute actually now has closed entry to the Vihar Lake. Maybe there are other reasons, and we used to go past Hostel 4 under the pipelines, and there was a proper path to go to Vihar Lake and the Vihar Lake hill, not the Samir hill, but there's another hill. So that was one of the favorite spots, okay, or sort of jogging along the water, those pipelines. There's a small road there. So, but going to Vihar Lake was very popular. Even swimming there, though later on we learned also that there were crocodiles. But anyway, fortunately nothing happened. And climbing that hill, also we did, that time there were plantations going on that hill. So that spot was really amazing. We would also at times go, like on full moon night, we would go be on the hill, and it was amazing to see the lake, with that full moon. Yeah, that was one spot. Of course, hostel was always the best place to be, other than being at the Vihar Lake. Yeah, once in a while go along the road which takes you across or past the boat club. That part was also very popular, actually. Yeah.
And now what is it?
So now Samir Hill is, of course, something which one like, because now we don't go to the Vihar Lake side. And the lakeside road also, walking, jogging, cycling. That part I really enjoy. That spot.
Like most of the first year students in that first week only go to Samir Hill. Yeah, it is still.
No, so it's always been a favorite that having a hill in your campus with the lakes, it's makes it amazing.
Yeah. Okay, now some fun questions that we have is, do you remember the best course that you took as a student?
Yeah. I think it still runs. The best course that I liked was transport phenomena in the metallurgy department. And I think it probably also became like that because of the person who was teaching, Professor Balal, who retired just a few years ago. He was very popular, and we used to have surprise quizzes in the course. And the course was, you felt challenged, and that part was very exciting with that course.
And what was the worst course?
Again, one of the worst courses, I don't want to name the professor, but in some sense the course, there was a course on solid mechanics, which the person who was teaching us instilled a lot of fear during the classroom. and that fear made it, not so pleasant actually. So I from then on I have never believed that, once you bring in the element of fear, the learning kind of simply stops. So that time, that particular course was not great, and to an extent, CS 101. I think for me it was somehow I could maybe not adjust to it so well. The entire batch did that course together, and overall as a group, students did not take it. At least some of them didn't take it seriously, and you got kind of affected. And when you were in those quizzes, as I said, every week there were quizzes, serious quizzes, which were adding up to your grade. That was very stressful, and at times, as I said, not being able to score anything at all, being frustrated at that. I think to an extent, I don't know whether it was that course or otherwise, but I never liked coding. So yeah.
CS 101 still runs. I guess, yeah, we also have it in our first year. So, you come from your school and you are used to like getting very good marks in general, and then you come here and then you have an entire batch and yeah, fair. Now that you've been professor for quite a while, do you see any changes in students who have like just joined and who you have been teaching versus the times when you were a student?
What I see, to an extent, I won't generalize it, but still, in reasonably good number of students, the intensity and the stress from the coaching one, I think that has over the years continuously gone up. So you see that element there in these students, coming from very intensive coaching. The other thing is, because of the fact, I think, that you have so much access to so much information. In our days, we didn't have any way of accessing information. Let's say what's going to be the placement like. I mean, one could talk to seniors, but for example, which company, what does it do, what are the various options that you could pursue, what seniors would tell you was there. But then I think for some reason, because of not so aggressive information transfer, I would describe our life more as carefree. But nowadays it seems to me that these students know a lot very early. So a lot of them kind of maybe do resume building, and are already thinking of things that they wish to do much later. I would say, again, many people say, right, mera samay behtar tha, something like that. So I would still think that if people were a bit more relaxed, focused on learning and not just only outcome based. It seems sometimes, it's very, very outcome based thing. But I may that's my perception. So that is one thing. Of course, I see other changes because of the large size of classes. That one-to-one interaction. Many times, students in the department not knowing each other is kind of, and I don't blame them, but it's odd. It's funny that some of my classmates we knew each other's roll numbers for sure and names, when there were people who knew CPIs of all. They could just spell out CPIs of all. They knew which project they were doing. So and very close interaction, right? So I think those are the things that I am seeing changes. But otherwise, some people say, how are students different? I think students are students, or young people are the same all the time. Right?
Then, is there any particular lesson that you learned in your student days which you find very valuable, or something that you would have done differently if you were to like redo or relive your college times?
Yeah. So sometimes I think. I feel I should have taken my courses more seriously, even more seriously now when I, look back. And not just because, I'm not saying this because I am now into teaching, but it just feels that way, that if you become more serious about learning, it's useful somewhere or the other. And the fact that, if you become serious about learning and you get into that habit, you get habituated. So that seriousness of being able to learn, of course I'm not saying don't have fun in life, but when you are serious about something, that also becomes a habit. So you are able to do things later on with a little more ease in terms of that seriousness when it requires, when something requires. I wish So I had to kind of, let's say, relearn.
Mm-hmm.
During my PhD days, I had to relearn that part. I wish I had also, now I see, sometimes I feel jealous with some of the opportunities that you guys have. We didn't have that much hands on.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had either on my own or had gotten into contact with people such that I could do a lot more hands-on stuff, which was not there. Also, I wish I had more exposure to the real world. For example, I did my BTech and then straight away went for masters and PhD. Looking back, I feel if I had worked for a while, that would have built my perspective, broadened it. So I wish I had done that, and I sometimes anyway feel, yeah, those are the kind of things. And then two three other things in the sense, very quickly, like I didn't read as many books. I wish I had read more books early on. I had to catch up, kind of, I felt reading books much later on when I saw people, what kind of things they had read, and of course, it helps to build your personality. And I was not so much into extracurriculars. I wish I had done that more also. So those were the things, yeah.
Mm. And your courses are quite popular among students. And yeah, so is there any particular philosophy or your approach towards teaching? Like, what can you say about that?
Yeah. See that, yeah, that is one thing which I have felt very strongly about since I joined IIT. So one of the things, I don't know however it sounds, but I feel one cannot teach anything to anybody, and it's not that comes to my. I mean, I read Swami Vivekananda's books, and when he writes about education, there are things like that referred to in what he says, and I agree with it that one cannot teach anything to anybody, but one can only sort of excite people about a certain subject, and hope that you have excited them enough so that they actually pursue it to an extent on their own. And also, I always emphasize the fact that it's not about grades, it's not about outcomes. The focus should be on learning. Grades are a byproduct, I always feel. So if you learn very well, then everything else will follow. And the other thing, very very important, I think everybody should probably realize that, maybe nobody, for example, till today has ever asked me my grade in any of the courses, whether I teach that course or whether I work on an industrial project in that domain. Nobody has ever asked me, but at the same time it does matter what I know,
Mm.
right? Or for an extension of that, having had that background, can I be creative in that field, can I think, right? So that's why I always say learning is so critical. The other things that I always like to emphasize, and I've had that inclination, is to connect the courses that I teach with the real world, which I said, right, I wish I had known that more. So what is the utility of whatever I am sort of bringing up in the classes? And also I have always felt very strongly about the fact that we are in an institute of engineering and technology, which is a tool to kind of create social transformation also, I feel, always, or socio-economic. And I have been showing that in my classes, that look, if we, as if we realize our role as engineers or technologists, we can work on generation of wealth which can bring social and economic changes, and every country needs that. And that is why I always feel that we should try to connect where possible courses to its utility. What can I do with it? What can I create using that course, right? That knowledge. So that always excites me. And lastly, I just quickly mention, I also always feel that like sometimes in courses I have also typically end up giving projects, where you should again be able to feel beyond what can be just covered in lectures and all of that, like samples. I would always love to show samples to people, or if we can give students projects where they actually have to create something or examine something like that, right? So those are the things.
Even I personally was there in your course, so I remember you. I mean, we had a lot of, I mean, it was surely quite an experience working on our course projects and stuff like that. And you also mentioned in a class that you took that about the time. like the time that we have, right? You mentioned something about us having a number of a certain number of
Absolutely.
days to live.
Yeah.
So like the next question is similarly like placed. Ki, what advice would you like to give to people on how to manage like social life, academics, learning new skills, doing hands-on work? Like how can a student balance everything given the uh, lives that they lead currently?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. See, what I feel is that, and whatever I'm going to say, I always sort of, put a disclaimer, or that it's not necessary that what I'm going to say should make you feel pressured and that you have to get to these kind of things very soon. But they should be there somewhere in the back of your mind. Things like, if you in your young life, whether in college or few years later, if you can figure out what is it that makes you really happy, what what makes your heart happy, um, what will give you pleasure, which you can do all your life, or use the word, for example, what is your passion. If you can figure that out, it takes a while, I think, to figure out what is your passion among all this information and your peers and packages and placement and what I mean, right? There are so many things, this, I would say, information overload. But in the middle of all that, if you can figure out what is your passion, right? And I always say, I mean, money is important, but one should not get influenced by it so much that you actually make choices which you necessarily, which put you on a path which you may not necessarily enjoy, right? You may, but you may not necessarily enjoy. So why not, think about what is your passion, what will make you really happy. The other things that I have started to think, again, maybe as I said, it can come later in your life, that what is it that you could do eventually in your life which either will make a difference to somebody else's life, to the society or the country. I do want to say that of course you should do things which make you happy and first take care of yourself, but can you make a difference or can you make an impact in some way, right? So are there things that one can think about, or I have been saying this in slightly different words, that gradually can you come to a point where you can say, okay, I found the purpose of my life, that's very, very important, I feel. And many times, even at an undergraduate level, if you start to get around that kind of a concept, I think that starts to bring clarity to you. Your choices can get directed accordingly, right? So I feel, although I know it's a very heavy phrase or whatever, sometimes people say, how can I find the purpose of my life? But in some smaller way also, even within that time frame, can you figure out, do you really want to go deep, sort of dig deeper into some technological things? Can you make that your purpose while you are an institute of technology, right? Instead of sometimes living with that thing that no, I didn't want to be in this discipline, this doesn't mean anything, maybe, but there is so much IIT offers, right? But at the same time, I have told this many times that, as I said, finding your passion, if you are able to find your passion as filmmaking, I have had some students who did excellent, but if you found that, and if you utilize your time well in IIT, do manage your academics, of course, but I think if you found your passion, if for example your passion was filmmaking, I think if you did filmmaking seriously, it will energize you so much that you would want to at least manage your academics well. But otherwise, you should not get into a negative kind of time frame. I don't like my department, neither I am doing anything else, and I am just spending time, and at the end of 4 years you realize that no, I could have done better with it. So those regrets should not be there. And I can just follow up on what you reminded me. This part I also want to keep reminding people that even if we live a life of 80 years, this is about only 29,200 days. And whenever I have thought of it, it energizes me. I may forget that, but I keep coming back to it, that we have a very limited time on this planet. We make a good use of it, better make a good use of it. I have always used that analogy that if you were given 29,200 rupees when you were born, and you were told that you would never get any additional money, right? How careful you would be in spending each rupee. Or if somebody were to say, can I borrow 100 rupees, you would think multiple times from that fixed pool of. So why don't we give that importance to time? It's time to me is the most expensive, the most valuable thing in life, right? So I think if one thinks about these things, then one can, start managing. As you said, you can balance your personal social life with academics and all of that. Yeah, one very specific point in terms of academics, I feel that to manage academics at times, it's just good enough to be attending lectures regularly, because otherwise you end up spending so much time catching on. The most efficient way is to just be in the lectures and use that time in the lectures to absorb as much as possible, so that you spend least of the time later on and do other things that you like to do in life, right?
And that was certainly a lot to think about. And yeah, I think that brings us to the end of this interview. Thank you so much, Parag sir,
Sure.
for taking time out and giving us all these insights. And yeah, see you guys in the next episode.